So why don't we get started? Thank you very much. It's 9:08 Eastern time, so we're a little bit getting started late. This session, we've been offering a number of free sessions for the last 6 or 7 months, and they've been pretty successful in getting information out to people about what's going on from our perspective and different topics related to structured on-the-job training and also the platform about Sojt. These are just meant to be information awareness building sessions. And if people want to follow up, that's fine. But that's the goal here is more training and education than anything else right now. This workshop for the next hour or so is that we want to make sure that people understand what is structured on the job training and how it differs from traditional OJT. And we've been getting people interested in how is it that we have been calculating the financial benefits of S-OJT? And this goes back a long time. Derek is with us today, and he's from Ohio, and I was at Ohio State University back in the 1980s, believe it or not, when I first started working with companies and conducting studies on the financial benefits of training programs and especially S-OJT as well. So we have a long history of work and information to share, and that's why we're doing this right now. Our quick look of what we're going to do today is to just chat a little bit about what traditional OJT is about and an overview of structured on-the-job training. I promise I won't make it too much like a lecture. And if you do have any questions or you'd like to make a comment, please either throw it in the chat and I can respond, or you can even open your mic. That's fine with me. And I'll share with you the S-OJT process that we use, whether we're doing it from a traditional face-to-face sense or through Sojt. And I want to share with you, evaluate S-OJT in terms of calculating the benefits, the financial benefits. So, and then of course, there'll be time for Q&A and some discussion at the end. That's our agenda. So why don't we get started? Again, thank you very much for being with us today, and looking forward to your comments as we go on. You know, when we first talk about traditional OJT, some of you may not have the context that I have, but it goes back a number of years ago when training programs and organizations became much more institutionalized, and managers were urged to send their employees to training and to training in classroom settings. And I like to use these pictures that I found because you can see on the left-hand side, there's pictures of a guy with his, leaning his head against his knuckles, and the same thing on the right side. And the middle picture I like to use because there was a time when people stopped allowing windows in training classrooms because of the distractions. And of course, you can see there are distractions from the training. One of the curious things that happened when organizations started implementing training programs off the job was that there was a continuous stream of on-the-job training. That didn't stop. On-the-job training continued to occur in organization, regardless of the number of classroom training programs that people offered in their organizations. Well, so when you think about traditional OJT, we have these terms that have popped up in the literature: follow Joe training, which is just kind of a colloquial expression, buddy training, sit by Sally training. That came from the old AT&T network where people, mostly ladies, would sit next to each other and learn how to operate the boards to connect people. And I've even heard it called babysitting, where a novice employee would be assigned to an expert employee. And of course, the expert would look at it as a babysitting exercise as opposed to a serious training activity. And so we have experienced, all of us have experienced, I think, because of the fact that we've all been in the workforce, what are the outcomes of unstructured on-the-job training? And we know that it can lead to unpredictable work outcomes. People were never sure, management's never sure what's going to happen. unreliable work outcomes in the sense that every time a person trains, that person may train differently. So trainees may receive different work, different information. Unstructured OJT or traditional OJT increases frustration. We've all seen that. We've all experienced it maybe as well. There is anecdotal evidence to suggest that it contributes to turnover as well. And of course, there's always the increased quality and safety issues because people may not know exactly what is expected of them and may make errors which may be harmful to themselves or to the product and service or services that they are providing. So we just know that over time, it's interesting to note from a traditional OJT perspective, over time, people learn how to perform their jobs, but we just never know the length of time, what the cost will be, what the consequences will be. There's just a lot of things. And in my own work, as I'll say, as I switch the slide here, my own work in this area started in the middle 1980s. And that was a time in the US when companies were very concerned about quality and implementing new work designs and being able to compete on a global basis. And so the first time that the word structured on the job training was in an article that I wrote in 1987 that reported on a project that I did in Columbus, Ohio. And it's so much of the things that we'll be talking about today can be traced back to articles that have been published, and you can check back on these and things like that. So the beginnings of S-OJT began from the work that I did early on in the 1980s as a response to the need for organizations to improve quality, improve productivity, and to be more competitive with global entities. On the left is a book that I wrote, still available from Amazon, quite a bit available, Unstructured on the Job Training. It's been translated, as some of you may know, into both Taiwan Chinese, simplified and complex Chinese, Arabic, Korean. And on the right-hand side is a complementary book, complements the S-OJT book on work analysis. It's a little bit newer, but it has to do with being able to document what it is that people do as part of their jobs. The definition that I use for structured on the job training is the following. And this is a definition that I've used for a number of years, and I keep coming back to it, and I keep asking the question, is this the definition that still is appropriate today? The definition that I use is, it's the planned process of having an experienced employee train a novice employee on a unit of work in the actual work setting or a setting that resembles the work setting. I try to be as clear as possible and as to the point as possible. To me, there are 5 key points to this definition I'd like to share with you, so you clearly understand that S-OJT is different from traditional OJT that we see. When we think about S-OJT, we call it a planned process. We call it planned because the way that we put it together, there's a design process, which we will look at in just a minute. And the way people deliver it is a way that we can help trainers on the floor or in the context of the work setting. And there's also a change management process. How do you implement this successfully? The experienced employee is not necessarily an expert, but that person obviously has to have some content knowledge of the work and some qualification as a trainer. The novice employee is anybody that requires training. And so a novice doesn't have to be necessarily a new hire. It could be a person where something has changed within the organization. So we think about that from the right person, the right time, and the right content as a novice employee. The unit of work is pretty important because we have to find out what it is that people should learn. And that has to do with things like job and task analysis and things like that. And there's a whole area of interest about that part as well that we'll talk about. And then finally, the work setting. SOJT obviously does not occur in a classroom setting, but it can occur in lab settings, it can occur in simulators, and also the workplace as well. And so that's my understanding and the way I teach about SOJT with these 5 key components to the definition. Over the years that I've worked with organizations and in government ministries, I found that SOJT has these kinds of applications. It's used where there are problems. In other words, an organization may have a workplace issue and they find that there has to be some training. A lot of times these are based on, for example, if a Kaizen process is used and new information is derived, then that information has to be shared and people have to be trained. Another use of SOJT has been when there's been work processes that people have to be cross-trained within a work area or work process. Another is that an entire job is people receive training on an entire job and all the tasks within that entire job are delivered through SOJT. This is an important issue today with our work with apprenticeships, because the tasks that people learn in the context of the work-based learning can be done through SOJT, but of course that does not address the prerequisite learning or the related technical instruction that might be related to performing the tasks. But we have done a number of projects where all parts of the job were learned through SOJT. And then finally, a blended approach where you might have some classroom training that's linked up with SOJT. For example, in a managerial program where new managers and supervisors learn about being a manager, doing managerial tasks, and then practicing and performing them through SOJT. So these are some ideas of how SOJT has been used and pretty much consistently being used in organizations today. We see when I talk to organizations, we ask them to consider using this process. This is a 6-step process, nothing magical about it, but it helps organizations ensure that they're developing the programs, whether it's through Sojt, the digital platform, or the face-to-face part of it. This just makes it a lot more easy to do this. And we're going to highlight just a couple of these in my presentation here, but very quickly, you have to decide whether it's appropriate to use SOJT. SOJT is skills-based. It's for people, it's situations where you want people to be able to learn a skill, to be able to learn how to perform an actual task from the jobs that they're learning. There has to be some job analysis, task analysis. Number 2, trainer development. Train the trainer has to occur preparing the SOJT modules. That's the training materials, delivering the SOJT, and of course, evaluating the SOJT as well. This is the cycle that we engage in. Just a little bit of context, if I can back up just a little bit, is that a lot of the things that I've learned about on-the-job training came from World War II, the program that's called the Training Within Industry Project, very famous from a historical perspective. Many people around the world understand about what was done in the TWI projects, especially the one that's called the Job Instruction Training Project. From that came my emphasis on SOJT, starting in the 1980s and through today. And now today, the evolution includes having a digital platform for SOJT. And so what we have done is given much more flexibility and integration in terms of all the things that have to be done to make sure that you're able to develop the training and also deliver and evaluate and manage the training through that digital platform. There are, we can respond to any questions about Sojt later, but it's important to kind of understand SOJT as well at this point. I'm not sure that it's necessary to go through all of these cases, but these are just some cases that I have worked on in the past. I have worked on and I put in a couple of projects that we're now engaged in through Sojt at the bottom here too. One of the things that's really been attractive, not exclusively, but it has been through the apprenticeship perspective that Sojt has attracted people interested in apprenticeship programs. So the reason I share all these case studies as well is to share that it's not just technical training necessarily for SOJT. It can be for managerial training, and it can be for high-level technical training as well. High level being for engineers, not just for technicians or frontline employees. I'd like to share just a couple brief little things. Make sure. Yeah, I'd like to share just a brief little parts of each of the process, just to kind of remind you of the importance of these parts, and also to kind of give you a taste of what's involved when you're developing SOJT programs. The second step here is to analyze the tasks. And typically for organizations, and this is good practice anyhow, is that you cannot possibly provide a training program that's skills-based without having an understanding of the work. And so you really need to do a job analysis and being able to be prepared to do a task analysis. Some of you, maybe Julius, maybe you're familiar with DACOM in Nigeria. And, you know, when I was at Ohio State, I was involved in that effort as well. But it's important to have that understanding that with SOJT, you have to do both the job analysis and also the task analysis. And this, what's on the screen, is a representation of the duty statements and the associated tasks that go with the duties. If you're interested in having a PDF version of this presentation, that is no problem. I can send this to you. And this is another representation of this idea of doing an understanding of what is the work and which tasks of these would be appropriate for SOJT. I wanted to also highlight the idea of preparing the SOJT modules. SOJT modules are the kind of the collective term that we use for the training materials that go to the projectors in Kuwait, how we organized the SOJT modules. At this time, it was in these little booklets. This was before the digital version was available. Unfortunately, this would have been a great application, but you can just see what it looks like from the outside. And I wanted to show you just very quickly what the inside of these pages look like. Do we have a specific template, a format for an SOJT module to make sure that the trainer introduces the information to the trainee, and that comes at the beginning. You can see here, there's the name of the task at the top here. You can see an overview of the task. This is information that would be introduced by the trainer, and you can see the prerequisites that are identified and what resources the trainee will be using and so forth. You can see that. And at the bottom here, you can see there's a ledger to keep track of where you are and where the trainee is in terms of the pages. And so the task analysis could look like this, depending on the nature of the task. It's not that difficult to do a task analysis. Many times we leave this to subject matter experts to do it by themselves. But when we work with organizations, we help organizations acquire the skills necessary to do these kinds of things. This is the actual training content that the trainer would use to deliver content to the trainee, the training to the trainee. And at the end of every S-OJT module, there's a performance check. One of the interesting things about looking at these documents is that the Sojt digital platform makes it a lot easier to format and input all this information and integrate, for example, the performance check with the delivery of the training as well. So a lot of things that were done kind of clumsy in a kind of a non-integrated but connected way. In the old days, you can do that now through Sojt, and it's a little bit more easy now because it's much more integrated and has much more flexibility. Another part of this that I wanted to highlight was that when we ask people, usually these are subject matter experts, trainers, experienced employees, we ask them to deliver the training, to deliver the S-OJT. And as you might expect, we have a way of doing this. We have a 5-step training events: prepare the trainee, present the training, require a response, provide feedback, and evaluate performance. So these are the 5 key steps, the training events that we would teach people that are to be a qualified S-OJT trainer. This information is embedded within the Sojt platform. So the organization or school that might be using the platform could then qualify their instructors or experienced employees as S-OJT trainers through an online program, and also through a review as well after the online program. I wanted to share with you some of the ways that different organizations have used these 5 steps. So you can see on the left-hand side, it's the same thing: prepare the trainee, present the training, require a response, provide feedback, evaluate performance. The same thing on the right side. We use the same 5 steps because we think these are the best ones for almost every situation, but we change the content, the specific content, based on the nature of the training situation and what else has happened within that context. So these are important in terms of our ability to consistently deliver the training. We recognize that trainers, S-OJT trainers, obviously are not professionals. They are people who have been asked to serve as a trainer, but they obviously have other job responsibilities as well. They may be managers, supervisors, or experienced peers. So we want to make it as easy as possible, but without losing the opportunity to achieve the training outcome. In many organizations today, they are splitting the mentor or the trainer responsibilities from the evaluator responsibilities. And this was true in the project that we did in Kuwait, because these are people working in a high consequence job in a refinery situation. And if an error occurs, there is definitely a high consequence. So you can see here, the left card has to do with what the mentor does with the trainee, and the right card is what later on another experienced engineer would do with the trainee, but only for the evaluation at the end, the performance check at the end. Many organizations are doing this, realizing that it may not be easy for the trainer to provide the training, but then turn around and then be objective in terms of making sure that the trainee can perform the task. And this may be true, this is obviously true in high consequence settings, but has become much more popular in other organizations as well. Well, I've tried to run through here as fast as possible, hopefully not too fast. Just an overview of S-OJT. And as you can see that it is different from traditional OJT. Traditional OJT is where you might just have people follow each other or just look over the shoulder. Or obviously another way of doing traditional OJT is to have people figure it out themselves. And that's an awful situation. I often tell the story many years ago when I was living, believe it or not, in Buffalo, New York, upstate New York, and I was looking for a job, and I got a job in a paint factory. And I remember I was 21 years old, I think, and the guy said, "You know how to operate a forklift truck?" And I was so in need of the job that I, of course, said, "Of course, I know how to operate a forklift truck." Well, I'm very pleased to report that I didn't dump anything. I didn't have any accidents or anything like that. But what I did was, when nobody was looking, I sat at the chair of this forklift truck and just played with the controls until I figured out what it did. I didn't know it was just trial and error. How terrifying it was for me to try to figure this out eventually after about 2 or 3 weeks. But it's not the most safe and appropriate way. Today, of course, you need a license to be able to operate a forklift truck in an industrial situation. But I remember that experience quite well. When we have evaluated S-OJT program, it's just like evaluating any kind of training programs. You probably are familiar with these basic questions. We have some choices to make. What are the most important questions to ask? Obviously, one of the questions that people ask is, did people like the training? Did people like, in a sense, learning through S-OJT? And, most people enjoy S-OJT because it's in the context of the work. They get a chance to talk to somebody that they will likely work with, either their manager, supervisor, or an experienced colleague. Another question that people might ask is, do people actually learn? And the idea of whether people learn or not can be easily addressed by the performance check. You identify the training, people go through the training, and can they perform at the end of the training to the satisfaction of the person observing them? And then the other idea here is whether or not people will actually use the information on the job. They've learned something, they may have learned safe work habits, those kinds of things. Are they going to be able to translate those or transfer those behaviors back on the job after the training is over? When we look at these questions, most people in the field are very happy to do at least some of these, to look at whether people enjoyed the training, were satisfied by the training. And that includes the trainers as well, whether the trainers were satisfied with the training and the perceptions of trainers about whether trainees learned and whether or not people were observed using on the job. The issue for us early on, when I became interested in S-OJT, was not the first 3 questions, because most people assumed that these questions would be addressed pretty easily. But the breakthrough that we wanted to make was to ask the question, what was the impact of S-OJT on performance? How did we impact performance? And as most of you know, this is not as easy to do as the others. It requires a little bit more diligence, a little bit more interest in what it is that you're trying to do. So that's what I want to share with you today. a little bit more information about the impact and how we've done this over the years. So I'd like for you to kind of follow along a little bit if you can. Please, if you have, I know you'll have questions and comments, but please keep them and we will discuss them as thoroughly as possible to make sure you kind of understand it. We do this in a way that tries to make it as easy as possible for organizations to do it without losing the complexity and the depth of the information that we can get. When we evaluate and think about impacts, we have to think about some key ideas here, key concepts. The first concept here is performance value. Performance value is the value of the outcome from the training. Okay, so it could be, depending, as you'll see in just a minute, it could be interpreted by, could be wages, it could be outcomes. Another key concept here is training costs. It sounds like there's a bird in the background. Maybe they're not into financial forecasting or financial analysis. Training cost is the investment purposely made by the organization. And you know, it's interesting when you think about training costs, traditional OJT typically has no training cost. And that's what's for many managers is very attractive, because I can, as a manager, I can just send a new hire and say, please, you know, I asked somebody to train this new hire and I've not expended any cost whatsoever. I mean, there are costs, but it really is represented in terms of the performance value. With S-OJT, there is a cost because you're doing all these other things that are involved. And then related terms here are the benefit and the burden. And let me explain this. The benefit is when you subtract cost from performance value. That's pretty simple to understand that, you know, if you think about an investment, you know, if you need $100 and you invest $50, you might get a really good investment and give you back $50 on top of your investment. So that's pretty good. That is the benefit. Also, when we think about this is the reduced burden. So like, for example, in some instances, you want the money, you want the benefit to be higher. Like if you're producing more good things, selling more items, you're increasing something. But when you think about quality and reducing rework, what you're doing is reducing the burden on the organization. It's an additional burden that goes to the organization. And so if you think about it, this has guided how we have thought about this by comparing options, looking at the performance value for option A. In this case, it might be traditional OJT, or option B, which would be S-OJT, and we can calculate performance value, we can calculate cost, we can calculate the benefit, or it could be the reduced burden as well. Let me stop here and see if there's any comments or questions about these three major ideas here: performance value, cost, and benefit. This will become a lot more clear in just a minute, but if there's any questions here at the moment, I'll respond. Plus, I'll have some coffee. Okay. Now, you know, sometimes when people look at the work that we've done, it may at first look pretty complex and serious and everything, but what we've tried to do is put these tools in the hands of managers, HR people, trainers, so that they're able to think about this as well, to think about these ideas as part of the doing their work. The whole point of thinking this way is to find ways to reduce the cost and maximize the performance value, right? Because that's what you do with any investment model. You want the least amount of investment and the maximum amount of return. So when organizations invest heavily in things, and I'm not being unduly critical, but we know that things like virtual realities, VR, augmented realities, and training, these are pretty exciting, but we know also that these are pretty expensive. And so we have to, one way of judging them beyond the wow value is whether or not you're getting a return that is anywhere close to what you're receiving. So, or that you've invested. And so that's pretty important. Okay. Over the years, we have found that organizations and schools are interested in two major questions related to the calculating of the financial outcomes, the results, the impact of S-OJT programs. Let me just take a minute here and explain these two questions. The first question is training efficiency. Training efficiency is, the idea is, am I able to reduce the training time? And if I'm able to reduce the training time or the learning time, then what are the financial benefits of doing that? Every manager wants people to get on the job and up working faster so that people aren't standing around. They're being as productive as much as possible faster. So training efficiency is about how fast I can train somebody effectively to achieve the goals, achieve the training outcomes. And if I'm able to do that, is there a financial benefit for being able to do that? Okay, so efficiency has to do with time. The other question that people ask about S-OJT, and I think about most other training as well, is about effectiveness. And that has to do with the outcomes of the work. The outcomes of the work in terms of, if I do something, what's the consequence? If I learn, for example, if I learn how to be a salesperson through training, that should give me the skills to be interacting with the customers more effectively. And if I'm more effective in working with customers, it's conceivable that this would lead to more sales. I'm just using that as a very simple example. It's a logic chain that we see and we presume that occurs. People learn how to do something through training. They're better able to perform that set of work. And the consequence of performing that set of work better influences the outcome of some other person who makes a decision. And the question about that has to be, is there a financial benefit for being able to reduce, to train people better? So efficiency has to do with time, the time to learn. Effectiveness has to do with the quality, the consequence of the work that we do. Good morning, Zainab. Good morning. So let me share something with you so that you understand this a little bit more concretely. Let's take the idea of training efficiency. Now, this is this looks conceptual in theory and kind of highly complex and everything, but this is very, very practical. And it's very practical. And this is one of the models that we use. And we have many published studies that use this model. But it's a way of conceptualizing this information. This is what's called a time performance graph. And you can see at the bottom, it says time to learn. And on the vertical axis is performance level. So if you're training somebody, they start off as a novice. And after the end of the training, they have been trained, and we call them a specialist for no other reason than the idea that they're able to perform the task in most instances of the task. And when we do this in an organization or in a situation, we start off with the question of what has happened in the past? What has happened in the unstructured OJT? And through interviews and observations and data, we can get a consensus of the idea of how long it took to learn this unit of work using unstructured or traditional OJT. And that's what this line here represents. The dotted line represents. And not usually, but always that line extends out. I'll share some data with you here in just a minute. So when you compare that with structured OJT, S-OJT, you can, now many times we do this at the beginning of a project, and we also do it at the end. At the beginning, it becomes a forecast. At the end, it becomes an evaluation. But we like to do it at the beginning because many times organizations want to know what they might expect from the investment of S-OJT. So if you look at the dashes for S-OJT, that amount of time is based on an estimate, based on the nature of the task, based on the organization's agreement that this could happen. All of this information is worked with the organization, with people involved. The critical difference here is this area called the savings in time, because it represents the difference between the learning time unstructured and this dash line of structured. And the question then becomes, if S-OJT can reduce the learning time, that's fine. But is there also a financial benefit along with that as well? Does that make sense? Have I gone too far? This is very easy, not easy, but it's fairly straightforward to do. And I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. Over the years, and I'm sharing with you work that we've done, and I've had, when I teach courses on this topic and people do a project, they have to do a financial analysis for the client that they are working with. And so we have many, many case studies and studies that I've done and published that more or less consistently show this information. What we have found, and this is kind of important because people would ask sometimes, what's the difference between unstructured OJT and S-OJT in terms of time? And so the answer to that is that S-OJT tends to be about 4 to 6 times more efficient. So if you're talking about learning time in days, it would be 1 day equals 1 day of S-OJT equals about 4 to 6 days of unstructured OJT. Does that make sense? So the time difference, the relationship seems to be fairly consistent. One time unit of S-OJT, and even in a big project that we did with the engineers, where we're dealing with months and accumulated years, that proportion of 1 unit for S-OJT equals about 4 to 6 units of unstructured OJT. So that means that instead of spending a week on training somebody, you're spending maybe a day or half a day training somebody. That has been the consistent outcome from the case studies, from the things that we've done. There's a review of literature in a journal called Human Resource Development Review that reports many of the studies that we've done in terms of impact. Now, along with that relationship of time is the idea of what does the savings in time actually mean in terms of its calculated, in terms of dollars or units of money. And what we found is another proportion. So it tells us that if you invest in $1 of S-OJT, you're going to return 6 to 8 units of dollars in return. So the savings in time represents not only a reduction in learning time by a proportion, but it also represents a return in a general sense in terms of savings in wages, savings and outcome that you might have in terms of personnel. Let me stop here just for a second. I know we're not that big of a group, but if you have any questions about what the meaning of these are and how it might apply maybe from your experience as well. Does anybody want to share anything at this point? Remember what we're talking about. We're asking the question, if we use S-OJT, what happens in terms of the efficiency? What happens in terms of the learning time? We're going to reduce the learning time and we're going to save money. We're going to make better use of money. Now, I'll keep going and we can come back. Another perspective question that companies and entities, ministries have asked us is effectiveness. And the question then becomes, if a person learns in one way, like using traditional OJT, and then they perform the work, and you find out how well they perform the work, you get a set of outcomes. And at the same time, you can look at what happened when people perform the work after having learned how to do it through S-OJT. And you can measure the performance. And then you have a way of comparing what happened before and what happened afterwards. Before would be the traditional OJT, and afterwards would be the S-OJT. Okay. Some of these studies we're very, very careful about because we obviously, if we've been involved in the development of the system, we want to be very careful that we're not too involved. We give people skills to be able to do the measurement and be involved in the evaluation. But it's not always necessary for us to be part of that evaluation because of the influence that we might have because we were involved in the development of the system. Well, we've done many, many studies in this regards where we've looked at what happened when people learn to perform the tasks before using traditional OJT and what happens after using S-OJT. And here are some of the outcomes. The first I'll tell you about in just a minute here, but we did a study in Ohio. Derek, if you're still there, you may know about the Kenworth plant in Chillicothe. I don't know if that's part of your area of your interest.
It's not my region, but yeah, I haven't heard of it. So
yeah, it's one of the 2 or 3 big Kenworth plants
okay.
that they have there. And so we did a study in terms of leaky windshields at the end of the production process, the assembly process, how people learned how to install the windshields. And then after the trucks were, went through a test afterwards, a high stream bath shower, and then leaky windshields. And I'll share you some of that with that data in just a minute. Also, in terms of sales calls and how that results in volume, how it results in how do we keep maintenance of machinery. In other words, if people are better trained to perform the maintenance, and many organizations today, you may not know this, but many organizations today are asking operators to perform some maintenance on the machinery that they use. They don't have to call somebody else to do all of it. And so you can see there's higher machine productivity. We worked with Sojt in Singapore in inspecting manufactured hard disks and reduced the scrap rate of the disks, because many disks were being viewed as being unusable, but in fact that they were. So there was some false rejects in their process. So in other words, from this logic is, the logic is that if you train people better, they know how to do it, then they are able to do it better in practice and have a different consequence. Another way of thinking about this is that I'll show you is that it's possible to influence turnover through supervisory behavior or job satisfaction. Because if you influence how supervisors are able or effective to give feedback to their subordinates, presumably they will have the skills to be more effective, and then they will be influencing people and not turning them off. They won't leave the organization. It's actually easier to calculate effectiveness than it is efficiency. Effectiveness is pretty easy today because all you have to do is, I'll show you in a minute, but I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but you identify through the task that you're working with, and you think about what are the consequences of that task? What are the consequences in a financial sense of not performing that task? And to see what it is that you can impact. This is also pretty easy because many organizations today are keeping track of these kinds of data, because this is quality data that it's important for them to keep track of. What I've shared with you are 2 perspectives, 2 major questions that have to do with S-OJT. Efficiency, the question of can we reduce the learning time through S-OJT? And I have to say, and this doesn't sound like, I don't feel like I'm boasting unnecessarily. This is not like a sales call. But we have never found an opportunity, never found a situation where S-OJT did not reduce learning time. It always reduces learning time, whether the learning occurs from a traditional OJT or even a classroom perspective, it reduces learning time. Of course, you have to invest to make that learning time reduced. And that's a question. Also, along with that, we've been fairly consistent in our studies to show that when people learn better, now this makes simple logic, when people learn better of what is expected of them, they're able to use that information and it impacts the outcomes of that work. We've seen that so many times represented. If I can share a quick story, back in the early 1990s, when we first started doing these studies, I was doing a work with a large truck manufacturer in the US that makes Kenworth and Peterbilt trucks. And I had been asked to come to Seattle, Washington, to give a presentation to a large HR conference, and senior management and HR managers would be there. And of course, it was a very nerve-wracking situation for me because they wanted to know what we were doing in one of the plants, and they wanted to know the details, and they wanted to know what was to be learned from all this. And so I had to be ready. And I was curious about what would be more important for people, efficiency or effectiveness in terms of an emphasis from their perspective. And I had always thought that effectiveness, because it's about quality, it's about improving the quality of the work. And I found from that group, and I always ask when I'm with groups and managers, I kind of trial balloon, and I try to find out, without giving away my experiences too much, to try to figure out what is of higher priority for them to know about, efficiency or effectiveness. And what I learned early on, back in 1992 or 93, is that efficiency is of more critical in many times to managers. And the reason that they gave me was that they don't want people standing around. They want people to be engaged right away. That's the most important. That's an incredible, critical, important thing. They need people to be, productive as soon as possible. So efficiency means you can get people learning specific tasks that get them working, doing something of value quickly. And they also believe that effectiveness may be important, of course, but there's other ways of improving, effectiveness, through tooling and lasers and work design and things like that. So training is just one of the solutions that you can use to increase effectiveness. When we have looked at effectiveness over the years, we found that we have reduced defects, fewer defects. We have first time quality, which means if there's a changeover in production, that the first time quality is pretty important. Reduced safety. Those of you, and there's one person here from the state of Ohio, and I've worked a lot with American Electric Power, and we looked at safety issues in using structured on-the-job training. Higher productivity because there's less waste. And also we've found that there's, on the part of trainees, there's greater satisfaction. They feel like the organization is taking care of them. They feel like the organization cares about their development. And on the other side, we have found that trainers and managers are more confident in the trainees, that they're able to actually perform the test. A lot of times people come back from training and managers are still wary whether or not the trainees have the skills. The issue of retention, we have some evidence, but nothing systematic. And that's something that we are very interested in now with Sojt, and also because of the issue of job retention that we see in across many societies today. What are ways that we can keep people on the job? And is development part of that equation that helps people feel like they are being valued within the organization? Of course, our predisposition is that development and retention do have a relationship, but development has to be done in a particular way. So this is the logic chain that we follow when we think about evaluating the S-OJT is we have to work from the unit of work, the tasks. And that's one of the great advantages of doing this kind of evaluation with S-OJT is you identify the unit of work. So it's not just a training program that you're trying to determine the return on investment. You have a unit of work. And you ask yourself, what are the outcomes of that unit of work or tasks? What are the outcomes that you're seeking to achieve? And the third question is, how do you attach a financial value on those outcomes? Everything that people do obviously has an outcome, if you think about it in this way. And there's a consequence to that outcome. So turnover is a consequence, presumably, of actions that have been taken or not taken, maybe by managers or supervisors. We did a study a number of years ago with a large bank, and I'll mention the bank name because it's been a number of years. Derek, you know the Huntington, but we helped them calculate what does it cost when there's a person that turns over. And we calculated the cost from, the recruitment all the way through the 3 months probation period. So that's the unit of analysis. And it's pretty expensive so when one person walks out the door, it's pretty expensive to replace that person starting from the recruitment all the way to the end of the 3-month probation. And of course, why that's important is who bears the cost? Is it, in that case, is it the branch or is it headquarters that bears the cost for that to happen? As I've mentioned in a minute, several minutes ago, is that there is this causal chain. And I teach this in my course. In our field, HRD, we believe in this causal chain. The causal chain is that training makes a difference. That's a summary of it. But what it means is that we can actually, through training, we can change people's behavior on how they do something. By changing their behavior through effective training, we can impact the outcomes that they produce. And the difference in those outcomes have meaning. And that the difference in those outcomes reflect back on the investment we made in terms of how we trained that person. So it's interesting to note that, going back to our original point, is that traditional OJT has no cost because organizations may not purposely budget anything for unstructured or unplanned OJT. People just learn on their own. What does get reflected is a reduced performance value, either for themselves or maybe for others, because when you think about supervisors, one of the constant complaints is they always have to answer the same question over and over. So that's a frustration for them as well. So this idea of being able to impact that causal chain and to say, what I do in the nature of the training can influence the behaviors that people use, which influences the outcomes that they achieve, which influences the consequences of those results. It's that causal chain. that we believe in. It's for those of you who understand this, it's human capital development theory in a small sense. I wanted to share this. This is my last slide. Our first study back in 1990, I think it was, in looking at the question of training effectiveness, was what we have come to call, my students and myself, the leaky windshield analysis. And what that was, if you can imagine, the workers are installing the windshield onto a truck. Okay, and it's kind of a complex operation because you have to put a rubber seal around the glass and you have to put the windshield in just right, put glue on it and put it in just right. And the glue sticks right away, so you really can't take it out after you've put it in. So it's got to be in first time. And we then looked at historical data within the organization, and then we charted what happened after the use of S-OJT. And you can see on the screen here, this is reported in a research study, that they were getting 3 leaky windshields. Oh, after the truck has been assembled, then they put the truck in a high intensity water spray to see if any of the windows, if anything is leaking. And when the windshield leaks, that means that the current windshield has to be removed and a new one put in. It has to be start over. And they were finding that they were at this time getting 3 leaky windshields per week, which adds up over the year. And we calculated an average cost of a leaky windshield at that time, $250. And so the performance value of unstructured on the job training is that $30,000. And we were able to reduce from 3 to 1. We weren't perfect, but we were able to impact and reduce the burden of the leaky windshields from 3 average to 1 average. So it went from 30,000 to 1. And so you can see in the bottom table that it cost nothing for the burden of $30,000. That was unstructured, traditional OJT. When we introduced S-OJT, we calculated the cost of around $976. That was the cost of developing the S-OJT and the delivery to the trainees in those, at that time, in those dollars. So those have to be added together. So the performance value and the cost has to be added together. So you can see that there's about a 3 to 1 difference between using, in this case, between using traditional OJT and S-OJT. In other words, you've reduced the amount of cost to the organization by a factor of 3. You've helped the organization reduce defects, the occurrence of defects, through the investment of this training approach. We were quite excited to have the opportunity that the organization gave us access to as much as we did, and the data that we got. And of course, those things are part of an agreement. And so after that, we've been doing this with every project, even with students' projects, we do this information. Well, what I've tried to do in the last hour, little over an hour, is to give you a summary of what is S-OJT, how it differs from traditional OJT. We know that OJT is critically important in organizations today because getting people back into the workforce is critical today. And we know that the time that people have been away, the work has changed. And so we're not only talking about what happens in classroom settings, both in schools and in organizations, but also the learning that occurs on the job as well. Excuse me. So also what I've sought to do today is to share with you our approach in terms of how we do the financial analyses. And like I mentioned, it takes a certain mindset, but you have to start with the building blocks, and the building blocks have to do with starting off with the idea that you're going to identify the tasks. What tasks are critical to be used and for S-OJT, and then to think about what are the impacts of those tasks as well. So I'm going to stop at this point, and we have no formalities here, please. And I would love to hear your thoughts and how this information is appropriate for your situation, or if you have any points of clarification, I'd love to be able to hear your thoughts at this point. And by the way, the picture taken is in Trinidad. So it could be in a lot of tropical places, but it is in Trinidad. Let me ask if you have any thoughts at this point, what the meaning of this information for you. I probably should have asked somebody, given somebody a question to ask. People do that, you know. Zainab, we have interacted a little bit online, and so it's nice that you made it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, sorry to be late a little bit. I do have an engagement, but I get into the most important slide. It was the graphic about what companies earn on making on-job training, and especially structured on-job training.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I could argue because it's what we use usually to convince companies to get into training, to have training plans, because I think I do this in some projects here in Morocco when I worked, and I worked also in initial training for vocational training for youth. The company doesn't accept to have traineeship because they think that it's a charge, it's something that will make noise on work, because they should train, mentor, coach the youth or the people in companies, and it's a waste of time. And if it's waste of time, automatically it's a waste of money. Mm-hmm. That's why every time we go to benchmark companies, we use the efficiency of the on-job training and explain to the managers how the on-job training help companies to earn money, to save money, because mm-hmm. it's a way to prepare the next human resource. And if there is an opportunity when some companies need to develop business, they should have human resources ready to be operational on the job and do tasks. I think it's a big important side of the on-job training. Whether there is another important side, which is the technical work that we do to make conversion of the tasks into competencies, and that's mm-hmm. the work of training engineering. It's to how we get into pedagogical work based on technical work, which is the tasks and how the work is done in the companies, and introduce it into into objective and competencies, learning objective and competencies.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments. It sounds like you have your thoughts pretty consistent with the message that I'm sharing with you today, and that's great. It's very nice to hear. Many times, you know, we tell managers and leaders that it's important because there will be a payoff, and we are asking them to have faith that will actually occur. And one of the things that I'm very cautious about is that we ask people to have faith, but we also have to show them the data. We also have to show them the actual information. And that's something that we have tried to do, is to actually have meetings with managers as a forecast up front, so that this is not just always an evaluation, but it can be done from a forecast perspective. And so they can look at the data, not just the words and the promises that this is going to make a difference, but they can look at the data. Now, some managers, as you know, will not be convinced because, you know, they just have too many other things that they have to worry about. But the most critical thing for me, and I think we share this idea, is that it's up for the managers to decide, but they have to have the data in front of them about what the potential can be. And if you can show them the data, if they agree that that data are accurate and valid, then that's important. But they can still make a decision any way that they want to. That's their prerogative. But I'm with you 100%, and I think that sending that message is pretty important.
I just make I would make a small comments also, is that on-job training is effective in 2 points. First of all, is for the new employees who get inside the companies, and second side is to enhance effectiveness of the employees who are in the company, because sometimes we do have a lot of problem in production and efficiency, but we don't know why. When we go to analyze very well, we observe that the way that employees are doing the work and the tasks is somewhere false or not effective. There is a waste of time, waste of, for example, communication. There is sometimes we don't understand very well the procedures, and it's a waste of time. So on-job training is also a way to enhance effectiveness for the employees who are working in the companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I had an opportunity to go to a conference in Morocco once, and I couldn't make it. I had just come back from another trip, and I had contracted pink eye. Do you know what pink eye is?
No, really not.
It's just a little virus. Many children get pink eye in school, and but I wasn't able to go. So someday I'm coming to Morocco, I swear.
You will be always welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Julius. Go ahead, open your mic, Julius.
Yes, thank you very much. It's interesting. It's in listening to you in the last, can you hear me now?
I can, very nice. Very good.
Okay, in the last an hour, probably an hour and a half. But something comes to my mind here. One of the issues here, if you put this in context in Nigeria, is that the money is very tight, and the companies are looking for a way to save money. The company to tell them that, look, you save money in terms of the training efficiency. So how will you go about that? Because a lot of them might probably think, oh, you probably want to get more money out of them. Maybe they are new to the idea. So how do you have something that one could do to approach an organization like that? A big organization probably have about 10,000, 8,000 employees. And when you put this in context, it's going to save them money. So how do you approach them from your experience? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. And they probably are experiencing a loss of money now through waste and rework and, having to do things over and ordering more raw materials that they actually require because they have waste and they know they don't want to come up short and all those kinds of things. And the criticality of training is that it can reduce that. But the organization, the managers have to be open to the idea of understanding what is the relationship between the skills of their employees and the overhead that they incur. So it may not be that they are going to have more volume, more revenue based on the products that they sell, things like that. But the cost of doing business can be impacted. The burden is what we call it. The burden of doing the business can be impacted through S-OJT. We feel pretty confident in that. And we just know that depending on how you look at this, there are many different ways of calculating burden, whether it could be turnover, it could be in actual rework, wasted resources, delay in meeting, I think I lost you, in delays in meeting the customer requirements. But I'm not, Julius has to come back, but I don't know what your experience has been, but first of all, you need to have somebody to talk to on the other side that's willing to be interested in listening about this. And I actually think that managers today are much more enlightened and informed today about these kinds of issues than ever before. Let me ask Juliana, you came in during the session. Juliana, where are you from? Are you from Nigeria? Are you there?
Good afternoon. No, I'm not from Nigeria. I'm from Ghana.
Ghana. Oh, okay. Very good.
Ghana. So I came in late, so I didn't get most of the information that was being discussed.
Okay. Okay. Well, it is recorded and it will be soon on YouTube, so you can take the time and you can watch again. Do you work for a company, Juliana, or are you with government?
Yes, I work for government.
Okay.
It's Ghana TV service. We are into technical and vocational training.
Okay. Very good. Well, we should keep in touch. I'm doing a lot of work right now in Ethiopia. Okay. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to keep in touch. Okay. Yeah, very good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the session. Welcome back, Julius.
Thank you.
Yes. Are there any other comments, thoughts? Some of you have heard this message before from me. It's maybe the same message that you've heard before. For some of you, it's a message that you try to impart to your own group of people that you work with. But one of the delights in working with S-OJT over the years has been that it's focused on tasks, units of work, things that people are actually expected to do on the job. And so it's not just a training objective for a leadership course or something like that, which is important, but you're also thinking about, from our perspective, actual things that people are expected to do. And that makes these calculations and these understandings much more concrete and tangible because you can see impacts of what people do. Derek, can I hope that you're still there. Is any of this information of value in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so the state of Ohio offers on-the-job training reimbursement for tech-focused, industry-recognized short-term credentials through the Tech Cred program, and that's for Ohio employers and Ohio residents only. But I would be interested to, I'd be interested to follow up with you, Ron, about that and see how maybe we could work together on this, or we have a complete list of credentials that are offered by in-state and out-of-state training providers, and I'd be interested to see how maybe we could work together on tech credentials and technical training.
Right.
All the training offered by the Tech Cred program is short term, so 12 months or less, and it's industry recognized, and it has to have a technical component. But the state offers reimbursement for up to $2,000 per credential, $30,000 per employer. In Ohio, a lot of states don't do that, so Ohio is great about on-the-job training and offering that to our employers.
Yeah, I know that Ohio is doing quite a bit, and it's really great. One of the things that we're doing, and this is for everybody's benefit as well, is we're finding some organizations that are involved in IT apprenticeships are very interested in Sojt, in the S-OJT, because it allows people to learn. It could be learning remotely. They don't necessarily have to, the on-the-job component of it might be a remote experience, and they can still receive the training through Sojt and still be going through the apprenticeship experience in that way too. So it's, I don't know if you are involved with that. We're working with CompTIA. Are you familiar with them?
Okay, no, not familiar to me.
Yeah. But whenever we think about apprenticeships, we think about industrial settings, industrial apprenticeships, or skilled trades, that kind of a thing. But it's interesting to note that there's all these IT occupations that are now subject to apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship programs through the DOL as well. Very interesting. So
okay, yeah. Well, would love to talk with you after this and maybe get you on the Tech Cred website as a training provider, or the partners that you have.
I'd love to, yeah. And just between, as we're communicating in front of everybody, I'll be in Ohio in about 2 weeks for this through October.
Okay.
I'll be up at, I don't know if you ever come up north all the way to Lakeside, but
no, not often. Nope. But we'll connect after this.
I can meet you halfway in Columbus. That's always
okay. Great.
That'd be great. Hello, Rommel. I see somebody just came. Hello, hello. Okay, how are you? Nice. You must be a colleague of Juliana. Is that true?
Yes, it is true. I'm a colleague.
I'm
sorry. I think I'm late.
You are late. I'm sorry.
Oh,
okay. But the session's recorded, and so on YouTube you can actually get it. And we are. If you introduce yourself, I'd love to know more about what you're doing with the government.
Okay. I work for Central Bank of Brazil. I'm responsible for developing learning solutions, and I'm interested in knowing a little bit about this program because Juliana said that it could be interesting for us, at least to understand a little bit more about it. And What else? Well, we are doing a kickoff. Oh, not right now, but in probably 2 or 3 months, in a mentoring program
Mhm.
that we are using. How can I say, distance learning, distance um, talk, because we are spread about 9 regions here in Brazil. So we are using this a way to get more people involved in.
Mhm.
Well, this is my job. Do you want to ask me something more?
Well, we don't want to take everybody else's time, but I'd love to chat with you more about your program, the mentoring program. Is it
Uh-huh.
possible that we might be able to schedule a meeting sometime, just a Zoom meeting, and we can chat?
Oh, nice. Of
Um,
course,
yeah,
we can arrange it.
I can reach out to you. I have your email here, and
Nice.
so then we can be connected. So
Okay.
you know, Juliana is my former student.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And she's very nice.
yeah, but she just graduated, so she's no longer my student.
Oh, okay.
Well, very good. It's nice to meet everybody. As I say, you know, we have these, we're scheduling another one later in the summer. And we have a group of people here of about 50 names, and we average about 10 or 12 or 15% show up. And that's probably as what we can do, but we do know that people log in on the recorded sessions, and that's fine. And we do follow up as well. Is there any other comments that you might like to share? I do appreciate all of your support and your interest in the work that we're doing. We will follow up and see what comments that you might have. And maybe we can stay in touch. So if we don't have any additional comments, I'm very pleased that you've been here with me. We have my email address is on the screen. Please feel free to contact me if you wish, if you have any thoughts or questions. If you'd like any articles that we've published, reprints about this information, be very pleased to share with you. Okay, so thank you very much. If you would like to hang around and chat a little bit, that would be great. Otherwise, we can close the session at this time. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Well, bye.
Hi. Hi, Ramon.
No, I'm just saying goodbye, but you
Okay.
want to talk to me?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Okay. Are you in Brasilia too?
Yeah, I'm Brazilian.
Okay, yeah. A long time ago in the 70s,
Oh.
I had an opportunity, a professional opportunity to do some work at Unicomp. So in Campinas.
Yeah, I know there.
Yeah.
I have been there almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
But I know a little bit. It's a very good university here in Brazil.
Yeah. So, and Juliana keeps asking me to come back to Brazil, and I say yes, anytime.
Oh, it will be a pleasure.
Yes. She was in Champaign, Illinois about 2 weeks ago with her family. Hi.
Hi.
And it was the first time I had met her. I had worked with her for 4 years, and you know, always on Zoom like we are. And so finally got a chance to meet her in person and her family and children. And so that was really nice.
Yeah, she's a very nice person. She was my boss in the past,
Okay.
and I have to be very grateful for her support to me because she believes in me and very it's very supportive. I had a lot of opportunities with her, and I know her. I know that she is probably a good student. We had some opportunity to talk about her project, and I know that she is trying to produce some knowledge about how to improve financial education
Mm-hmm.
for adults.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I will try to read his thesis or dissertation. Dissertation, yeah. I don't know
Dissertation,
exactly.
right? Yeah, dissertation. Yeah.
And I'm here in Brazil. I work for central bank almost
Mm-hmm.
26 years,
Mm-hmm.
26 years, and I'm always in the same function. I mean, always dealing with training and development, and we explored a lot of methodologies there. For example, we learn about 6D. We learn about high impact evaluation. For example, these are a couple of Canadian professors. They teach us, sorry, they show us how to do a better learning evaluation, and we try to put this
Mm-hmm.
in our practice, and it was very good. For example, and we tried a lot of things. For example,
Mm-hmm.
coaching, formal learning. Well, and we did a very good evaluation program there. Juliana has had an opportunity to present. I don't know exactly, but in University of Illinois, I think
Mm-hmm.
the evaluation that we did with graduate students from Brazil, from Central Bank of Brazil,
Hmm.
and it was a success because they could return to their jobs and got promoted, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a very good measure. They implemented some of their knowledge and their proposals. So we
Hmm.
think that it was a good program.
Yeah. Interesting. I was looking on WhatsApp, and she had sent me Portuguese translation to structured on the job training.
Oh,
And so she says it should be, and I excuse my pronunciation, treinamento un serviço
yeah,
estruturado.
exactly.
Yeah.
It is exactly
So
this.
from her perspective, that's how
Treinamento em
you,
serviço estruturado.
yeah.
Very, very good.
So we now have a Portuguese Brazilian translation for structured on the job training, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, I read a book from Dale Bretthover. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and he said something about how to improve performance using on-job training
Mm-hmm.
in 3 simple steps. First, you describe the process for the participant, and then you put him to work together, and you give feedback. You allow him to taking more steps during the process, and then in the final step, you let him not exactly alone, but under supervision, just seeing if it's okay, it's everything that he or she trying to do, it's going okay. So these simple 3 steps we try to reproduce there. We wrote a kind of checklist for the I will say teacher and the participant on job training, and we applied it a few times, but everyone that said it was a good structure. I don't know exactly how we work, but it was our past experience on it on job training.
We have to, I'm going to send you a little handout that describes
Okay.
SOJT. And
Thank you.
it's unfortunate that it's been translated into Korean and Chinese, but never into Spanish and never obviously into Portuguese. But maybe that's something we should do, is to translate it into one of those languages. But that would be something I'm very pleased that we got connected here, because you know, after Juliana has graduated, she started asking me how she and I might be able to work together.
Oh,
And
right.
I said, well, first of all, you should be on LinkedIn, so you
On
know
LinkedIn,
yeah, so you know what I'm doing. And then we got connected through WhatsApp. We hadn't really been connected in that way. And so now we are you on LinkedIn? Are we connected?
Yeah,
through LinkedIn?
I'm there. You can reach me searching for Rommel,
Yeah.
ROMEL, and
Yeah.
Nogueira.
Yeah, I've got your, in our participant list here, I've got your email.
Oh yeah, nice.
At
So
pcv.gov.br. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me send you some materials, Rommel, and you know, maybe it might be possible for the three of us to have a meeting sometime.
yeah,
I know that she changed jobs, but I don't know if she's still involved with what you're talking about. But
not exactly. Right now, she is responsible for an important department here, but it's dealing with money laundering and avoiding those actions.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit far from it, but
Yeah.
probably it's important to know the methodology, because she will implement. She's very smart,
Yeah.
so she will implement probably a lots of knowledge from the.
Well, when I send you materials, I'll copy her too. So so she's kind of knows what's going on a little bit. And I do appreciate that she let you know about the workshop today and we got connected. That's wonderful.
Nice.
So yeah, nice. But, you know,
Feel
she
free
was
to contact me anytime you want. I will be out of work about 1 week, next week exactly, and
okay.
then I will return. So
Okay.
you can reach me anytime after this next week. Okay.
Okay. I will send you some materials, and we will later on in the summer, maybe we'll have a chance to connect again.
Okay. It will be a pleasure.
Very good. Thank you very much, Rommel.
Thank you.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Hello, Zainab.
Hi, hello, Ron. How are you?
Okay. Bye, Rommel. Nice that you stayed back. I'm pleased to have a chat with you.
Yeah, me too. I was late because I do have a meeting that we end really late, but I think I get the most important of the presentation. It was about money.
About money. Oh, well, how are things? How, you know, I've been doing a lot of work in the Gulf Middle East, and I'm probably going to be there in the fall. One of the clients for Sojt that we're still working on the details is Aramco, and so we're starting a project hopefully soon with them, and one of the tech schools that's related to them. And did you see that I'm doing a webinar on Monday? I have a partner in Bahrain. Did you see that?
On LinkedIn, sincerely, no.
No, I will send you I'll send you the announcement for it. It's 9 o'clock Monday night. And if, you know, this is the time, I'm working with a consulting firm in Manama. And so I don't know if you do any work, are you just based mostly in Morocco, or do you get around?
No, I wanted to get around. It's my objective this year is to have one experience outside Morocco. It will be nice to begin on it. I'm seeking in Africa, but also in perhaps interest in other country. It depends on the experience. It depends on the project. What is it about, and what kind of value that can I can make I added to the project and projects for me. It depends on the experience, but I'm open to work outside Morocco. I think I get a level in consultancy that I need to go outside and get more resources by what person do, and I stay here that for this question because I think in Morocco we are more influenced by European approaches. In on-job training, we love a lot the German one. It's
I was going to say, yeah, the German system.
Yeah, German system, dual system.
Do you have that in your schools, the dual system?
Yeah, we did a blended approach. It's about alternative training and apprenticeship training. When we have alternative, it's 50% of the models are learned in the training center and 50% in the company. And for apprenticeship, is 20% of the models are learned in the training center, and 80% are learned in companies. So we have this system. It has his advantage, but there is a lot of difficulties because we don't have in companies a culture of training. That's what I said. The companies think that is a charge, that having the apprentices in the company will perturb a little bit the way the work, and it's very difficult to make advocacy for companies to get accepted the youth people in companies. But I think there is now with the USA, Morocco is making a lot of cooperation, a lot of business. I think it will be also a good idea to benchmark Moroccan market and see how, because I think that American companies will not be very comfortable with the dual and the European approaches. And it will be very good if we seek for how to help those American or Moroccan companies that work together to make on-job training and situate on-job training. I think there is a lot of potential and opportunities there. Well, I know how the Moroccan market works, especially in training. And if there is, I don't know if we can dig a little bit more in it, it can be also a good thing.
Well, I'm, one of the things that I'm doing, of course, is working with people as partners and, you know, as a means to extend my ability to reach out to companies that I might not normally be able to have contact with. I've done a lot in Kuwait over a number of years, and some in KSA and also in Bahrain, but I've never done anything in Morocco. And so, but I know it's a country that European companies and Western companies find appealing. I'm going to send you information about the webinar coming up on Monday, and that will be a kind of a short demonstration of the platform of Sojt. It'll be a quick overview of structured on the job training, and then a little bit of a demonstration of the platform. And that'll give you more than what we discussed today. We won't be talking about impact at that meeting. And I think there's going to be people from industry, people, managers and things like that from the region, contacts that this guy has. So let me send to you that information. Hopefully you can attend. It's 9 o'clock at night. Are you on the same time as the Gulf countries? No?
No, we have, I think, 3 to 4 hours of difference.
Really?
But I will, yeah, but it's 9 a.m. or
9
p.m.
p.m., which would be Kuwait, Bahrain time.
I think it will be okay. 9 p.m. It's about, I think,
Which
6,
direction? 6
6
p.m.
or, yeah,
Okay.
or
Well,
7
while you're eating dinner, you can watch the
Yeah,
webinar.
yeah. I can attend it. Yeah, there is no problem.
Okay. Well, I'm hopeful that you can, and then that'll have a chance for us maybe to have a chat after that, and to see what's going on. Because I do know I was supposed to go to a HRD conference about, this must be about 6 or 7, 8 years ago in Morocco, and then I had a little eye condition that I couldn't leave the United States with that, and so I missed the opportunity to visit your country. But I do know that there's some, professional organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is, and now there is a lot of dynamic between Morocco and USA.
Mhm.
And I think it's a good market to dig in it. There will be a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see for Monday.
I will send you an email now before I leave my desk, and then you'll have that information.
Okay, and we will have a chat after that.
Very good, Zainab.
Thank you,
Nice to meet
Ron.
you.
You do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you too. Bye-bye.
Have a good bye.
Bye-bye.